Dungeons & Dragons is experiencing a renaissance. The easier mechanics combined with classic callbacks of the 5th edition rule set deserve a lot of credit for this surge in popularity, but the books couldn't do it without the backing of the zeitgeist. When we consider the rise in 5th edition's popularity, two contenders often enter the ring against the monster of public fear and ignorance. Stranger Things reintroducing the game's concept to a broad Netflix audience, and Critical Role's actual play capturing the hearts of the online geek community. They both deserve credit, but they only delivered the 1-2 knockout after 12 rounds of an intense cultural brawl. The creators of the original D&D were not only influenced by pulp fantasy novels, but by the Lord of the Rings books. The works of J.R.R. Tolkien achieved their own well-deserved renaissance with the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy released from 2001 to 2003. These movies were watched by millions, their characters and scenes became iconic, and when Return of the King won the Oscar for Best Picture, it really staked the claim that fantasy was a legitimate genre for both popular consumption and critical evaluation. Entrenched fans and new readers alike flocked to the movies and the books, and this undoubtedly laid a foundation for more people willing to pick up D&D down the line. But there is another. A film series and a book series without the history and influence of Middle-earth, but arguably a greater impact on the 21st century. A genuine cultural phenomenon that spawned midnight release parties, a wide-ranging media franchise, a theme park, and countless merchandising opportunities. I want you to think back and remember just how massive Harry Potter was in popular culture from the first books publishing in 1997 to the last film's release in 2011. If you're a millennial or Gen Z, you probably remember Scholastic book fairs and your Harry Potter Lego set. If you're a boomer or Gen X, you probably remember reading the books all the kids were getting into and wondering about the controversy around them, itself a sort of echo of the satanic panic that sought to keep D&D underground in the 80s. We cannot overstate the popularity of Harry Potter. We cannot ignore that many of us wouldn't have become young adult fiction readers or role players without first experiencing an orphan boy under the cupboard becoming a wizard hero. The modern boom of Dungeons and Dragons does not exist without Harry Potter. Okay, so let's be real. I have no way of proving that claim. I may be a longtime game master with years of professional experience, but I'm no social scientist, and I don't know where we would begin to try establishing an official Venn diagram of Potterheads and dice goblins. But I'm also far from the first one to think about this. A quick Google on Harry Potter D&D will bring up hundreds of articles, videos, and forum posts of people who have considered the similarities and differences between the two fantasy properties and how they can reimagine Harry Potter and D&D either in bits and pieces or in an all-encompassing campaign. Anecdotally, you could go to the closest nerd near you, ask them what their favorite D&D class is, and ask them what their Hogwarts house is, and I'd bet they'd have an answer for both. They just might hesitate to give you that last one. Harry Potter is no longer the cultural juggernaut it used to be. The Fantastic Beasts spin-off didn't do exactly what it was supposed to. The Hogwarts Legacy video game caused a lot of hype initially, but isn't talked about 2 years later, and overall interest and discourse around the series has dwindled. Calling yourself a Potterhead now is likely to cause some cringe responses in the same way that calling yourself an unironic Marvel fan or a Disney adult might. I respect everyone's right to be the kind of nerd they want to be. But in the case of Harry Potter, we need to address the boggart in the wardrobe. J.K. Rowling has caused massive damage to her own creation and its legacy. Anyone still buying Harry Potter products or repping Slytherin swag in 2025 will at worst be condemned and at least get some side-eye from fellow geeks who are in the know about Rowling's tweets. We're eventually going to have to talk about Rowling and perhaps one other controversial figure. We're going to take a brief look at Harry Potter's legacy and reappraisal. We're going to examine the ways it is similar to and different from D&D, and perhaps most relevant to you, how you can run your own Harry Potter role-playing game at home. So whether you're a grognard, a dice goblin with blue hair and pronouns, or my mom, grab a butterbeer and hop on your Nimbus 2000. You're in for a ride as I guide you through the Dungeon of... Bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum bum bum. Bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum bum bum. Harry Potter is kind of a big deal. Just looking at the numbers, the book series has sold over 600 million copies, making it the best-selling book series in history. The Lord of the Rings series has sold 150 million in its lifetime, and even if we were to pick any 3 Harry Potter books and compare the two, Tolkien's work would be dwarfed in the category of sheer sales. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone sold 120 million copies, beating out The Hobbit at 100 million. The Lord of the Rings film trilogy grossed $2.9 billion worldwide, which does top the first 3 Harry Potter films grossing $2.7 billion, but the entire 8-movie series tops out at $9.5 billion. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Orlando continues to be a highlight attraction. My little sister went. She met the Weasley twins, and she bought me the official Draco Malfoy wand because I'm a blonde little shit. There are still dedicated Potter goods stores, and Harry Potter merch has sold somewhere upwards of 7 billion. But quantity isn't everything. Harry Potter has faced some serious reevaluation in recent years. When acclaimed and prolific fantasy author Brandon Sanderson was asked what he thought about the series now, he said he liked the books and he's not a revisionist. I don't want to be a revisionist and tell you that Harry Potter was always bad, actually. But it does have problems, and while those problems are more pronounced with hindsight, I think we all could have done a better job at recognizing the series' flaws back when we were idolizing it. The flaws are numerous. There's a popular video from Sean where he breaks this down, and if you really want to know all of the series' problems, you can check out this 10-hour video from Lily Simpson. To not rehash, but to give you some spark notes in the form of a top 10 list, here are some of the series' issues. Dumbledore is kind of a bad dude who repeatedly puts Harry in dangerous and abusive scenarios, yet he is portrayed as this wise and noble angel. The setting is very whimsical and fun, but starts to fall apart when you examine the world building with the least bit of scrutiny. Werewolves intended to be an AIDS metaphor is really messed up. An entire race of willing slaves is even more messed up. Condemning and mocking Hermione for advocating for said slave race is just the toxic cherry on top of the slavery sundae. Voldemort is the villain for believing in eugenics and magical blood supremacy, but his beliefs are basically affirmed within the fiction because some wizards are just born more powerful than others because of their blood. Chang. Dividing children into houses based on their pre-adolescent personality traits and assigning that one of these houses is the evil one where the bad kids go is messed up. There's a weird amount of fat phobia. The series does not engage with the root cause of its villains and its divisions and instead maintains the status quo in its closing chapters. The Ministry is saved and Harry is a cop now. The end. Now, it's okay to hear me tally off all of those flaws and still view Harry Potter as a fine work of art that you love. The point is not to judge something as good or bad, it is to recognize that all art will be flawed, especially as it ages. My channel is dedicated to building a better game for you and me on whatever terms we each have. Our real life and our favorite works of fiction impact the stories we create with role-playing games, and if we do not engage with history and art critically, then we can't earnestly try to make something that matters to ourselves and the people we play with. So, what about D&D? D&D has a history going on for 50 years now. It is difficult to calculate just how much industry and profit D&D represents, because the open game license allows for other creators to utilize aspects of the game to make their own products. The 2014 5th edition Player's Handbook sold 1.5 million copies at big box stores alone, estimated to be around 75% of the market. So when you figure in Amazon and local game store sales, the number is probably closer to 2 million books. Just like my family's one copy of each Harry Potter novel, each PHB could represent a whole family or friend group playing the game. This year, Wizards of the Coast claimed 85 million people, quote, engaged with the brand, which includes people actually rolling dice, people playing Baldur's Gate 3, and people buying D&D shirts because they don't play D&D, but they like the silly voices on Critical Role. But of course, D&D has racked up its own controversies over the years. I did it for Potter, so let's do it for the world's greatest role-playing game. Here's a top 10 problematic D&D things. Orcs are a dark-skinned, aggressive race of super predators. Drow are a dark-skinned, evil race of matriarch slavers. Dwergar are a dark-skinned race of mind slaves who, now freed, enact tyranny on others. Hadozi are a monkey slave race. Vistani are a greedy, tricksy, fortune-telling G-slur race. The Oriental Book, the Mesoamerica Book, the Africa Book, girdles of femininity and elixirs of love. And a 10th thing, wait for it. But to be fair and balanced to the folks jumping to the comments, allow me to present an alternate top 10 list of what some people have told me is really wrong with modern D&D. Pushing safety tools on seasoned adult gamers, demanding social contracts be made between friends, not drawing a line between real-world race and fantasy race, empty political correct language like changing race to species, wheelchairs, gender ideology, diversity in humans in what should be a Eurocentric white medieval Renaissance setting, equity and racial ability scores and features between humanoids that should be different, inclusion for mentally ill and disabled characters who should reasonably have difficulties, and a 10th thing, wait for it. Now, many of that last list may sound like appealing features rather than detractors for you. I certainly know where I fall on those issues, and if you want to know more about that, then welcome to my channel. But the reality is that Dungeons & Dragons and games like it are played by people from all walks of life and all social and political leanings. The game will mean different things to different people and be valid because of the make-believe nature of D&D storytelling. I have my game, you have yours, and both our tables can be happy and need not meet. But what about the 10th thing that we can agree on about D&D's legacy? Tell me, Muse, the plight of Wizards of the Coast, who saw legions of 85 million engaged fans, yet could only sell 2 million players' handbooks. Sing to me the tragedy that these cruel players can engage with their work weekly, yet somehow not pay a weekly subscription fee? Wizards of the Coast has mere millions of monies, yet in order to have billions of monies it rightfully deserves, it can only sacrifice the very workers that brought it success. Woe be to WotC, poor WotC. The legacy of D&D is becoming one of greed. The Suits think the franchise is under-monetized, considering the vast fandom and time spent on the game. By buying these 3 books for $150, or honestly just these 2 and some YouTube videos, or honestly just this one and some hard work, a table of 5 people can extract thousands of hours of entertainment. From a business perspective, it makes no sense. You want more Harry Potter, you gotta buy the next Harry Potter book, and while you wait on the books, you gotta buy a Halloween costume and a Lego set to engage with the property. You want more D&D, you gotta buy the next adventure. No, actually, fuck you, I made my own adventure. But you want more giants. No, fuck you, I made my own giant and he's cooler than yours. That's not fair, my father will hear about this. WotC did quickly back off its attack on the OGL due to fan backlash. Time will tell how they approach products in the new era of the 2024 PHB, which itself could be seen as a cynical cash grab since it changes relatively little about the game and it isn't even a new edition or 5.5. For the record, I have the 2024 PHB on my shelf and I do think it is an improvement, but my own still running D&D campaign has kept using the 2014 rules, and it is very possible for players to use those rules indefinitely or any of these other rules. When HBO releases their new Harry Potter series or J.K. Rowling eventually writes a new generation going to Hogwarts, you don't have to engage with it. You can choose the D&D and the Harry Potter you want as your own. But let's talk about how these two exist and how they're different. Harry Potter and Dungeons & Dragons are both vaguely in the same fictional genre, fantasy. There are magical spells, dangerous locales, wizards, and fantastical races. If you're aware of Harry Potter but not aware of D&D, Mom, just how similar are these two? First, let's start with the subgenres of fantasy. D&D is described as being heroic fantasy first. There are offshoots of this like the sword and sorcery of Greyhawk, the horror-toned dark fantasy of Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft, and the bizarre space fantasy of Spelljammer. But the base of D&D that most homebrew campaigns revolve around in some way is an optimistic heroic tale where the protagonists are powerful players in a highly magical world. While Harry Potter certainly has heroic elements, the conflicts and action are a little less grand, and rather than being set in a secondary world like Middle-earth or Westeros, the events are occurring on our modern-era Earth with a secret magical twist. This puts the wizarding world somewhere towards urban fantasy, just without the urban. Through Harry, the audience has a stand-in that is introduced to the hidden magical elements of the world just as we are. This is very different from D&D, unless you're playing a game like the 80s cartoon series. Your player characters are assumed to already be ingrained in their fantasy setting with a backstory and motivation towards adventure. Harry has to discover the setting and his motivations as he learns he is a wizard. Let's talk about wizards. There are 12 classes in the 5th edition D&D Player's Handbook. Getting rid of the non-spellcasting marshals, the divine spellcasters who get their powers from gods, and the primal spellcasters who get their powers from nature, we have sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Wizards cast their spells from their spellbooks using their intelligence statistics, and this is pretty well in line with the wizards of Harry Potter. Of course, Rowling has the gender distinction between wizards and witches, but in D&D, your female intelligence-based spellcaster is also considered a wizard. Now, on top of having to learn and study your spells, there is the aspect of magical bloodlines in the wizarding world, which is actually like the sorcerers of D&D. The 2014 version sort of removed the bloodline language while keeping it as optional flavor text. There's also the 13th class called Artificers, who gain their power through brewing potions and using magical devices, and magical items and potions do play a big role in the Harry Potter series. So Rowling's spellcasters stand out as something unique. You are magical or muggle by birth. Specific items and ingredients help you out, but your overall aptitude with magic is determined by a combination of your natural affinities and your practice study with spells. Hey, so quick editing note. This is where I removed a fairly substantial section talking about hard, soft, and firm magic systems, reincorporating Brandon Sanderson, and it was just a little much. I love the Stormlight Archive. I adore Warbreaker and Tress, and I think that Mistborn also exists, and it was just a lot to talk about, to the point that, table it for another video. Maybe I'll talk about the Cosmere RPG. But anyway, yeah, Harry Potter magic a little more on the soft side, D&D Sanderson more on the hard side. Let's move on. What about spells? In the 2014 Player's Handbook, a spell is described as a discrete magical effect, a single shaping of the magical energies that suffuse the multiverse into a specific limited expression. In casting a spell, a character carefully plucks at the invisible strands of raw magic suffusing the world, pins them in place in a particular pattern, sets them vibrating in a specific way, and then releases them to unleash the desired effect. Good flavor text. The mechanics of spells rely on the Vancian system of spell slots per day according to spell levels. I can throw out cantrips like Prestidigitation and Eldritch Blast at will, but I can only throw out so many fireballs per day to keep some semblance of game balance. Harry and the gang seem to be able to cast spells as many times as they can shout Expelliarmus. D&D spells are cast using a combination of verbal, somatic, and material components. Respectively, that's Leviosa, not Leviosa, just swish and flick, and Eye of Newt and Mandrake Root. Harry needs a wand to cast most of his spells, and this is reflected in D&D by arcane spellcasters using an arcane focus to ignore minor magical components. So this all checks out, and you can easily begin to replicate the effects of spells in Harry Potter with the rules of D&D. It's just that while Rowling's world features a lot of more whimsical applications and utility spells, D&D magic is mostly about moving through the dungeon and taking down dragons. So let's talk about action. D&D is presented as being a game built on 3 pillars: exploration, social roleplay, and combat. Of the 3, combat has wildly more attention in the rules and abilities of the game. You might wind up telling a dramatic tale and finding curious locales, but you come for the boss fights and the goblin hordes. Harry and his friends get into some intense fights in the climaxes, although they may not be as visceral and flashy as your D&D game. The movies tended to make the spells and action more exciting because, like, they're movies, but the books finish fights pretty quickly with things being over with the exchange of 1 or 2 spells, a bit more like a Wild West duel with wands than a prolonged engagement like Lord of the Rings. D&D combat takes a long time. It's a common joke that the rules say each combat round represents 6 seconds in the fictional in-game time, but out of game, it's not uncommon for all the turns in that one round to add up to several minutes or even 1 full hour of play. I actually happen to favor Rowling's approach here. We have to recognize there's a difference between reading action and participating in it. Naturally, the latter is going to want more time and buy-in from its audience, but there are loads of complaints about how 5th edition combat is too drawn out and becomes a big math problem, while Rowling gets straight to the point that allows her dramatic beats and character moments to shine. By the way, Voldemort is a lich, his Horcruxes are his phylacteries, Nagini is a spirit naga, Peter Pettigrew is a were-rat, and the Death Eaters are standard wizards who have taken levels in Warlock with the Undying Patron. Couldn't find a great segue, just wanted to bring that up. But how about all those fantasy creatures? Both series have giants, centaurs, merfolk, werewolves, and trolls, plus plenty of other common creatures found in folklore, like the hippogriff, phoenix, or unicorn. Both series take on a veneration of dragons with many distinct subtypes, although Rowling's dragons are more of a beastly nature, while many D&D dragons are intelligent and conversing like Smaug. Elves in D&D are the more aloof and lithe, Tolkien-esque variety with a Feywild ancestry, while Rowling's house elves are diminutive and quirky, a bit more like D&D gnomes. Goblins are also quite different in each property. While the Harry Potter books revolve around human characters, in your D&D party it's far more likely to have someone playing as Hagrid, Dobby, and Griphook alongside Hermione, whose class would be wizard but would be called a witch for flavor, and whose species would be human, but it might get tricky in the specific racial consideration when it comes to muggles, half-bloods, mudbloods, squibs, and purebloods. D&D doesn't really have parallels for all of this in its mechanics. For that, you need to work with your dungeon master on the background and the flavor of your character and your setting. If I were playing in a Harry Potter-inspired D&D game rather than running the game like the forever DM that I am, I would be most interested in playing a Vila character, or at least a Vila-blooded character like Fleur Delacour. Vilas aren't talked about much in Potter lore, and they don't have an easy comparison in D&D without going full harpy or succubus mode. How does a character with seductive and primal traits rein in or take advantage of their abilities? Will the mechanics focus on these enchantment abilities, or will I build off type and make a more damaging caster or tank mage? Will the party and NPCs objectify and otherize my character, or will they be accepting as part of the wizarding society? These are the interesting questions you can delve into with role-playing, and because Harry Potter and D&D already share so many bits and pieces, it's easy to start putting together the puzzle to create your own game. From going down that list, you may already be thinking about how cool it would be to play Hagrid as a Goliath Beastmaster Ranger, or incorporate the intelligent menace of Aragog into your next random giant spider encounter, or give your players a flying car and see how badly they screw it up. It doesn't matter that your kitchen table game won't sell millions of copies in bookstores around the world. The story you make is so much more special and intimate than anything that can be mass-produced and sold to you. So let's take a long look at how you can take the elements you love about Harry Potter, remove some of the things you don't like, and create something special. Harry Potter D&D brings up some issues in the departments of mechanics, flavor, setting, and real-world ethics. But it's okay to like parts of Harry Potter or all of Harry Potter, and you want to run your Harry Potter campaign. Here's 5 ways you can do that. Option 1. Play it straight. Run 5th edition D&D, have everybody be a wizard in Hogwarts, and with each adventure a new year passes and things get more serious as Voldemort's influence grows and the students need to become heroes. You are allowed to do this. No one will stop you. Rowling can't hurt you with a copyright strike while you play out her story in the comfort of your mom's basement, and no dork on the internet can take Harry Potter from you. You can follow the way of a Harry Potter musical and revel in the world while playfully poking fun at its flaws. This is me giving you permission to go relive your favorite Hogwarts moments by playing them out with dice and silly voices. Do it. Or option 2, you forge your own path. You can detach yourself from the problematic elements of the work and the author by playing in Hogwarts but incorporating your own storylines and setting elements. This is Harry Potter plus homebrew, a bit of collective fan fiction. Lord knows there is plenty of Harry Potter fan fiction out there, either taking place within the canon wizarding world but with uncanon events, like Harry and Draco hooking up, or within AUs, like Harry and Draco hooking up after football practice, or hooking up after fighting in a space opera war. These are things that are all possible within the rules of D&D and the outline of Harry Potter. But what you must understand is that, according to Tumblr, as a dungeon master you are required to have Harry and Draco resolve their rivalrous tension with 20 sessions of slow burn yaoi, culminating in steamy gay sex in the girls' washroom secretly observed by a squeeing, moaning Myrtle who totally ships them. If you take the second option of Harry Potter D&D, then this is the path you must follow. Sorry not sorry, but those are the rules. Option 3. If you want even more separation from the work, you can make your own fully homebrew setting following the framework of a magical school that faces an outside threat. The book series and TV show The Magicians roughly follows this framework, with its characters being aged up into college students so that we can have sexy times and even more violence and mature subject matter. But if you want an example that is actually D&D, look no further than the Adventure Zone graduation podcast. The Adventure Zone Balance is my favorite actual play D&D series, featuring the adorable McElroy family of My Brother, and Me fame. Your littlest brother, Griffin McElroy, ran that campaign, and it is a beautiful example of gradually transforming D&D in its most rote and raw state into something that is personal and artful. Graduation has your middleest brother, Travis Big Dog Woof Woof McElroy, take the DM seat on an adventure in a magical school of heroes and villains. It does not go as well. If you want to know more about what went wrong, you can explore this video. For the record, I think that while Travis makes some mistakes, we all make mistakes and he's a decent guy who made an attempt. The point is that a magic school is an evocative setting, but it is not a recipe for success. Even without the baggage of Rowling's Hogwarts, you will be facing an uphill battle to make this work. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can let someone else do the work for you. For option 4, we need to talk about Strixhaven. Strixhaven was introduced as a Magic the Gathering set in spring 2021. While there are other magical schools in fiction the set could have drawn from, it is pretty clear that the elevator pitch for this set was, we need to make our own Harry Potter. Students are divided into houses that align with Magic's color pairs. They have their own Quidditch. There are adorable Allem because a closet furry in the pitch meeting wanted to literally just be Hedwig, and there is an evil mage threatening the campus. The Strixhaven Magic set was quickly followed by the tie-in D&D setting guide and adventure book. So what is in that book? Is it worth your time? Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos, is a settings guide with 4 adventures across 4 school years, culminating into a full campaign, bringing your party of 4 to 6 magical scholars from level 1 to level 10. It allows you to create characters in the colorful colleges of Lorehold, Prismari, Quandrix, Silverquill, and Witherbloom. Like most 5th edition books, there are a few extra options for your player character. The Owlin race was introduced as a highlight, but is pretty unremarkable beyond being able to fly, which is already present in the Aarakocra. There's a bunch of backgrounds, which are also lackluster because backgrounds are the easiest to handwave and customize piece of your character build. There are accompanying feats, which are quite flavorful, but are basically repeats of feats like Magic Initiate, and there are 5 new spells, including the notorious Silvery Barbs, a frequently banned option that I for one think is annoying and lame, but not overpowered. There are extracurriculars and jobs that affect your immersion as well as the mechanics of your character navigating the university. There are mechanics for exams, student dice, and relationship points. The book presents several detailed characters who can become beloved, so I've frequently heard people saying the Strixhaven book had a dating sim, and I see where they're coming from. That might give you some pause if you're picturing students aged 11 to 17 like Harry Potter, but the Strixhaven book does vaguely mention the characters are young adults at a university, so I think you can safely assume 18 and up college students. As we go into the 4 adventures, Campus Kerfuffle includes orientation and exploring the campus through 4th level. Hunt for Mage Tower has everyone choose their college, play some magic sports, and advance to 6th level. The Magister's Masquerade revolves around preparing for and participating in a magic prom, taking you to 8th level. A Reckoning in Ruins brings forth the villain Murgaxor Grinchel, who you stop before he sucks out everyone's life energy or whatever. The final pages of the book give you 44 new monster stat blocks. Like the monsters found in the Ravnica and Theros books, I think these stat blocks really shine because by drawing upon Magic the Gathering cards, which put an emphasis on both artistic portrayal and PvP balance, the mechanics and flavor of D&D are able to elevate standard minions and bosses. I'm a fan of well-designed monsters that are easy to play and have a purpose, and the Strixhaven monsters as a whole are really good and even inspired designs for which the staff should be commended. The standouts are the 5 Founder Dragons, legendary monsters with built-in spellcasting and personality. I really think these are top-tier D&D monster designs, with the only problem being that as friendly creatures and CR20 plus monsters, there's no real reason you'll have to actually use these stat blocks to their full potential in the level 1 to 10 adventure. Which kind of brings us to the core issue I see with Strixhaven. When I was a professional dungeon master at a local board game store, I was also a retail employee at a boutique establishment. I was expected to work with both knowledgeable and new customers to find the right product for their game nights and their gift givings. I can easily recommend the starter set for someone looking to get into D&D, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything for someone trying to expand their D&D world, or Tales from the Yawning Portal for someone looking for modular adventures. But who is Strixhaven for? I think the marketing around Strixhaven lends itself more towards a younger audience, but from years of playing with plenty of nerdy kids, I can tell you that most of them don't want to roleplay as young adults going to school. They get enough of school and they want to play real adults going on real adventures. Adult gamers have plenty of other adventures to choose from, and I'm not sure how many of us want to relive our high school or college days and roll to pass an exam. And if you're really into the idea because you really like Harry Potter, as I've already mentioned, there's loads of homebrew out there for explicitly Harry Potter D&D games, and you can just make up your own for free. While I think the concept is neat, the art direction is fun, and I enjoyed playing the Magic set when it came out, it's hard for me to recommend Curriculum of Chaos. it doesn't provide many good player options. As a settings guide, it is thin on setting. As a campaign guide, it offers a lot of funky subsystems, but not a lot of meaty story and conflict. As a monster supplement, it's nice, but there are better books with more monsters if that's what you're looking for. If you're watching this and you've played with the Strixhaven book, please leave a comment telling us how it went. I am very curious what your experience was like compared to your more typical D&D adventures. But for me, judging it based on skimming through its chapters in a couple hours, I'm sorry, but I think this might actually be the worst option to go for a magical school game. But now I want to talk about what might be the best. Option 5. You don't like Harry Potter and you don't like D&D. Neither multi-million-dollar franchise is your bag, and you just want to experience the magical fantasy with friends in an approachable and inexpensive way. There are several smaller and more affordable TTRPGs out there, but I want to highlight Kids on Brooms. You start by setting boundaries and collaboratively creating the world. There is specific advice if you want to play diverse and neurodivergent characters. The GM section provides guidance on how to encourage your players to help create the story rather than just react to the story you create. If this all sounds too soft for you, the book also emphasizes that any fights must be deadly, with combat playing out not as battles of attrition over hit points, but as roles to seize control of the narrative. You have 6 stats: brains, brawn, fight, flight, charm, and grit. Each stat gets its own die, ranging from a D4 to a D20. They can all be used to cast magic in different scenarios. There's no list of spells. Instead, you as the player describe what you want your magic to do, and the GM calculates the type of magic and difficulty for the role. This conceptual style of gaming isn't for everyone, but neither is D&D's huge menu of stats and considerations for everyone. You choose a trope to play, like Wacky Prankster or Aloof Professor, answer some questions, and get going on the session, which doesn't have to lead into a big campaign. It's fine to just have little adventures with your friends like standalone movies without a massive franchise. This is a neat little system, and buying the paperback or PDF will only cost you half as much as a discounted Strixhaven book off Amazon. So if you are looking to run a Harry Potter-style role-playing game, I think this might be the easiest and maybe the best way to do it. I'll leave links in the description if you want to check out the game on DriveThruRPG or see the Kids on Bikes main page. But no matter what approach you take to your magical school RPG, much about the tone and the story of your game will be up to your game master. It's time to talk about the most important dungeon master in our tale, the BBEG, the Boggart in the Closet. I want to get something out of the way if it wasn't apparent already. I think J.K. Rowling is quite good at this whole writing thing, probably better than you or I will ever be. She created something with passion and wit that combined many tropes and traditions into something that wound up looking very original with its own distinct flavor and lore. Her core characters are likable and relatable, her plot structures and concepts are compelling, and her prose is engaging and often riveting. For the original run of the 7 Harry Potter books, she was very, very good at this, and she deserves credit for her talent, her drive, and her creative spirit. But then there's her personality. For better or worse, Dungeons & Dragons ask you to make a personality designation on your characters and your monsters known as alignment. There is a division between law and chaos, good and evil. Good takes effort. It is the sacrifice of something personal to generate acts that benefit others. Evil also takes effort. It requires you to gain something personal by forcefully taking the sacrifices of others. Neutrality between these two requires no real effort. It is the default state of someone resting and doing what they must to get by. Rowling is a billionaire. All her talent and success earned her a fortune. She could do a lot of good with that fortune, the world could certainly use it, but she could also do nothing. Joanne could become a recluse, hire a lawyer to handle her personal affairs, and buy her 5 mansions in the 5 most luxurious cities in the world, maintained by 5 perfectly proper butlers who would attend to her respective wine cellars, dog kennels, and posh boudoirs housing the 5 hottest trophy husbands on Earth, eagerly obeying the whims of a rich and powerful woman. Rowling could have all of this and live a life of luxury, unburdened by the world, resting on her laurels as one of the most successful and respected authors of her generation, and I would not judge her one bit. But instead she found Twitter. Rowling puts active effort into disparaging trans people and reveling in any degradation to their rights in the US and the UK. To quote Lindsay Ellis quoting someone else less important than Lindsay Ellis, "Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals." We can only assume Rowling has always hated trans people, and her mind has not been changed by thousands of her own fans being trans. Learning from her books that they can be loved for who they are, and fight for their rights to not be marginalized and prejudiced against, only to have these exact things done to them by the very person that wrote their favorite childhood books. J.K. Rowling is neutral evil. No matter what your thoughts on trans people are, by the way, they are real and valid and always have been, and they should have equal rights like the rest of us. No matter what your views, you have to admit that Rowling could do nothing and have her mansions, but she instead chooses to type up tweets on Elon Musk's X.com and laugh at the misery of trans people. This gives her zero benefit beyond her own enjoyment of seeing her side win and the other side suffer. That makes her a jerk, a playground bully, Dolores Umbridge. And speaking of jerks, this is Gary Gygax, founder of D&D. Or at least one of the founders of D&D. This other guy here is Dave Arneson. Gary took on the face of the product and pushed Dave to the side, taking all the public credit for the popular game they both made. You might think Gary is just a chill guy. He made a game beloved by millions. How bad can he be? And if you want to defend him, you'd be in good company. But every news story and quote I hear about Gary Gygax makes me think. Removed from his name and legacy, judging only by the content of his character, this is a guy I would never invite to my D&D table, a DM I would never voluntarily play with, at best, a paying client I would accept money from to run a professional game for, but only so far as he could behave himself around other human beings in this thing we call a society. I do not like Gary Gygax for plenty of little reasons, but there is one big reason. Gary Gygax is a self-proclaimed biological determinist, which is only a few steps removed from saying, "I think eugenics is good, actually." He thought women and girls shouldn't play the He-Man woman-hating club game he takes credit for making. His legacy of putting people in boxes according to their birth is still felt by the controversial handling of race and monsters in D&D, an ongoing struggle that Wizards of the Coast is still stumbling in trying to fix, and I don't blame them for their Sisyphean task of rolling the boulder of progressivism up the essentialism hill that Gary formed of his own bullshit. Gary is a jerk. He valued the worst parts of this game and this community, which are being corrected by indie developers working against decades of bad habits founded on one man's self-centered tendencies. I am thrilled that there is popular backlash to Rowling's antics because maybe it means that in 20 more years her legacy won't be as casually accepted as Gary's. Potter fans have already had to contend with the controversy surrounding their still-living jerk of an author. But not all D&D fans are aware of or have thought about the should-be controversy of the very dead father of Mordenkainen and the multiverse of bigotry. Let me be clear. Fuck Gary Gygax. You can recognize his contributions to gaming and respect him as a flawed human being, but he does not deserve your adoration as some grand creator or gamer role model. I hope he rolls in his grave as you, I, and even WotC tries to fix the products of his ego. It's easy to remove Gary Gygax from the D&D equation with a death of the author approach, to see the work that exists in part because of him as something completely separate from him and his views. For J.K. Rowling, it is much more difficult. Whether or not you believe your dollar affirms her beliefs, Rowling believes it does, and she has said as much. But the more you know about her beliefs and the more you examine her books, it becomes more clear that the rigid divisions and traditions of the wizarding world are intertwined with the rigid ideologies of their author. Then again, maybe they're not so rigid. Rowling is still a living human being who can still change, and there is an infinitesimally minuscule but non-zero chance she sees this video. So, corny as hell, but I got you a card, and I just handwrote a little note, and I'm gonna read that right now. Hi, Miss Rowling. Your books meant the world to me when I was younger. I think you're a great author who deserves respect and adoration for your work, and it hurts to see you tarnishing your own reputation by harassing a minority just like the villains you wrote in your stories would do. In case you need some small, faraway voice to tell you, you can stop any time. I know there are a lot of voices close to you praising you for your stances now, but I promise you their approval would not compare to the love you would receive from millions of queer folk if you just stopped, apologized, and put in a little work to undo some of the pain your words have caused. I know I'm a pesky, pixie-sized creator and you're an international figure with tons of pressure on you to act the right way, but I was also a snobby blonde kid constantly compared to Draco Malfoy, and I worked hard to mature and build empathy for others in part because you showed me that even Draco could turn good and be loved. You don't have to be the bad guy. Thank you for your stories. Sincerely, Jackson. We've talked a lot about Harry Potter and D&D. But where does that leave you in all this? What is the destination at the end of this journey? I can't tell you what to think. From reading the comments to my more serious videos, I get the sense that some of you are looking for someone to tell you the answers, but that is not my intent. My goal is to offer you the gift of true sight, but only you can choose the path you wish to follow based on that information. I am trying to reframe questions so that you can discover your own answer, even if that answer is different from mine. I can't tell you what your relationship to the Harry Potter franchise should be moving forward. I can only tell you how I'm going to deal with my own. Harry Potter is always going to have a place in my heart. I wasn't big enough to read the first book, so I remember my mom reading it to me at bedtime. As I grew up, I started reading the books on my own. My mom started reading them by herself, and my dad and little sister picked them up too. The Deathly Hallows came out while we were on family vacation, and my parents made a rule so that no one could binge our only copy before everyone got their chance with it. One chapter, pass it down, family book club to talk about that chapter together before moving on to the next chapter. We owned all the movies and would turn on ABC Family at Christmas to let the marathon run in the background while we opened presents. When I left my hometown 7 years ago to move to the other side of the country, in my big family send-off, my dad gave a little speech where he said, "Son, when you look in the mirror of Erised, may you only see your reflection." This is a touching and meaningful sentiment and something I carry with me as I discover what I desire in life. I remember having Harry Potter board games, Lego sets, and Bertie Bott's Every Flavor beans. Harry Potter was a big deal for my family, but also for my friend groups. When Deathly Hallows Part 2 came out in theaters, me and 3 girlfriends went to the midnight premiere. One of the girls made us custom printed shirts for the occasion. The petite scene girls said, "I'd give all to a Ravenclaw." Our tig-bitty goths said, "I'd give in to a Slytherin." Our hot stoner girls said, "I'd take it rough from a Hufflepuff." And my own said, get ready for it, on all fours for Gryffindor. This is all to say I was absolutely a Potterhead. These stories were foundational for my development as a reader, as a movie lover, as a video gamer, as a board gamer, as a fantasy enjoyer, and as a creator. But now, not only do I not care anymore, but thinking about the series kind of disgusts me in a way. I can recognize that the books have good in them, but the flaws in the series cannot be ignored. The bigotry of the author cannot be forgiven until she actually makes some attempt to listen to her queer former fans, and it's hard for me to respect others who still pay for Potter products that embolden Rowling and sweep under the rug the problems of the wizarding world. You may not think buying a single $30 reprint will matter in the grand scheme of things, but no raindrop feels it is to blame for the flood. Perhaps that's a little harsh. When the 2023 D&D OGL debacle occurred, I advocated against throwing out your D&D books just because the suits at Hasbro were getting things wrong on policy. I'm not here to judge you or yuck your yum, and there's ultimately so many more harmful things you can do than liking a book about a boy wizard. And after all, this is my favorite mug. And now it's gone. The rights and respect of my trans friends matters so much more to me than nostalgia for a book series. It's not worth keeping that mug. You can have guilty pleasures and problematic faves, but at some point you have to contend with what openly supporting that thing signals to other people. Nostalgia can be experienced without being worshipped. I will always fondly remember my mother reading me that book and going to the midnight movie premiere with my gal pals, but I do not have to live in those moments and try to recreate them. Whether it's fanfic or Strixhaven, I will never run a Harry Potter D&D game. But you can do what you want. You're not a bad person if you still like Harry Potter. Keep your annual rewatch of the movies and your comfort reread of the series if that's something that makes you happy. Be proud of what influenced you and be proud of how your values are different from some out-of-touch billionaire. Take your old books off the shelf and read them to your kids. Find teachable moments between the pages to show them that misfits deserve love. No group of people deserves subjugation, and sometimes your friends need to stand against the rules in order to fight for what is right. Play D&D or switch to some indie RPG that is less crunchy and less corporate. Either way, you can play a good game. Or don't ever play an RPG. Sometimes it's nice to be curious about other media and hobbies without being entrenched in them, and I appreciate you watching all this way through just to try to understand a little more about why fantasy books and role-playing games matter to some people. No matter who you are, you're a wizard, because I, for one, believe you can create something beautiful in this world, whether you cling to or deny the heroism of the boy who lived, his friends, and the magical world that brought him meaning in an otherwise hopeless modern existence. Wizards and elves are a fantasy. The people you play games with are real. Trans people are real. Everyone's story matters, even yours. I hope you have a nat 20 day. Bye-bye.